Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. And Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhat Paramahansa Vadudika Acharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON need to be found at Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Vadudika Acharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam and Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jai Mudiriyed. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Give me a second. Okay. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service unto the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 8th day of September, 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I'm afraid I made a little error. We haven't read 26 and 27, so I'll read those myself, and then we'll chant this one together. 28. Yayastu snana vibrashta navakumkam apinjadam vitrisho pipibantyambha payayanto gajagajihi So this is all describing Kailas mountain, Shiva's abode, where all the demigods and everything are going, led by Lord Brahma, to apologize. After the damsels of the heavenly planets bathe in the water, it becomes yellowish and fragrant due to the kumkum from their bodies. Thus the elephants come to bathe there with their wives, the she-elephants, and they also drink the water, although they are not thirsty. Text 27, no purport. This is a lake or a river and the Kailas mountain they're describing. Tarahema Maharatna Vimana Shatasankulam Jushtam Punyajana Sribhir Yatakam Satadid Ganam. The airplanes of the heavenly denizens are bedecked with pearls, gold, and many valuable jewels. The heavenly denizens are compared to clouds in the sky, decorated with occasional flashes of electric lightning. Purport. So it appears they're in heaven. The airplanes described in this verse are different from the airplanes of which we have experience. In the Srimad Bhagavatam and all the Vedic literatures, there are many descriptions of vimana, which means airplanes. On different planets, there are different kinds of airplanes. On this gross planet, Earth, there are airplanes run by machine, but on other planets, the airplanes are run not by machine, but by mantric hymns. They are also used especially for enjoyment by the denizens of the heavenly planets, so that they can go from one planet to another. On other planets, which are called Siddhalokas, the denizens can travel from one planet to another without airplanes. The beautiful airplanes from the heavenly planets are compared here to the sky because they fly in the sky. The passengers are compared to the clouds. The beautiful damsels, the wives of the denizens of the heavenly planets, are compared to lightning. In summation, the airplanes with their passengers, which came from higher planets to Kailas, were very pleasant to look at. No. Kailas is in the Himalayas, and they came down from heaven, and so they're coming in their airplanes. Text 28. Hitva yaksheshwara purim vanam sal gandikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadahai hitva yaksheshwara purim vamam sal gandikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadai hitva yaksheshwara purim vanang saugandhikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadai hitva yaksheshwara purim vanam saugandhikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadai hitva yaksheshwara purim. Not sound, sound, yeah. Saugandhikam. Vanam saugandhikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadai hitva yaksheshwara purim vanam saugandhikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadai hitva yaksheshwara purim vanam saugandhikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadai hitva yaksheshwara purim vanam saugandhikam chatat drumai kamadugaya ridyam chittamalya palachadai hitva passing over. Yaksha Ishwara, the Lord of the Yakshas, Kubera. Purim, the abode. Vanam, the forest. Saugandhikam, named Saugandhika. Cha, and. Tat, that. Durmai, with trees. Kamadaghayi, yielding desires. Ridyam, attractive. Chitra, variegated. Malya, flowers. Phala, fruits. Chadai, leaves. Translation. While traveling, the demigods passed over the forest known as Saugandhika, which is full of varieties of flowers, fruits, and desire trees. While passing over the forest, they also saw the regions of Yaksheshwara. Purport. Yaksheshwara is also known as Kuvera, and he is the treasurer of the demigods. In the descriptions of him in Vedic literature, it is stated that he is fabulously rich. It appears from these verses that Kailas is situated near the residential quarters of Kuvera. It is also stated here that the forest was full of desire trees. In the Brahma Samhita, we learn that the desire tree which is found in the spiritual world, especially in Krishna Loka, the abode of Lord Krishna, we learn about the desire tree. We learn here that such desire trees are also found in Kailas, the residence of Lord Shiva, by the grace of Krishna. It thus appears that Kailas has a special significance. It is almost like the residence of Lord Krishna. Okay. Let's read a couple more. Raktakanta kaganika swadamandita shatpadam kalahang sukalapreshtam karadanda jalashayam. In that celestial forest there were many birds whose necks were colored reddish and whose sweet sounds mixed with the humming of the bees. The lakes were abundantly decorated with crying swans as well as strong-stemmed lotus flowers. Purport. The beauty of the forest was intensified by the presence of various lakes. It is described herein that the lakes were decorated with lotus flowers and with swans who played and sang with the birds and the humming bees. Considering all these attributes, one can imagine how beautiful this spot was and how much the demigods passing through enjoyed the atmosphere. There are many paths and beautiful spots created by man on this planet Earth, but none of them can surpass those of Kailas, as they are described in these verses. Okay, the next purport has a little more volume. All these atmospheric influences unsettled the forest elephants who flocked together in the sandalwood forest, and the blowing wind agitated the minds of the damsels there for further sexual enjoyment. Okay. Purport. Whenever there is a nice atmosphere in the material world, immediately there is an awakening of the sexual appetite in the minds of materialistic persons. This tendency is present everywhere within this material world, not only on this earth, but in higher planetary systems as well. In complete contrast with the influence of this atmosphere on the minds of the living entities within the material world is the description of the spiritual world. The women there are hundreds and thousands of times more beautiful than the women here in this material world, and the spiritual atmosphere is also many times better. Yet despite the pleasant atmosphere, the minds of the denizens do not become agitated, because in the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha planets, the spiritualistic minds of the inhabitants are so much absorbed in the spiritual vibration of chanting the glories of the Lord, that such enjoyment could not be surpassed by any other enjoyment, even sex, which is the culmination of all pleasure in the material world. In other words, in the Vaikuntha world, in spite of its better atmosphere and facilities, there's no impetus for sex life. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 259, Padam Drishtva Nivartate. The inhabitants are so spiritually enlightened that in the presence of such spirituality, sex life is insignificant. I'm sorry. Ladies on this side? Yeah. I mean, if you want, you can sit on here, but the ladies behind. So, Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we're hearing now in the last couple of dozen verses about the beauty of Kailas mountain. And this is apparently a place on the earth. And this is the abode of Lord Shiva. Now, it's interesting that Lord Shiva is known for not having any fixed residence, right? He doesn't have a big palace. He meditates, and he lives under a tree, and he consorts with various unsavory characters, bhutas and ghosts and pretas and things. And yet, look at the atmosphere of the place where he lives. The natural atmosphere is practically like the spiritual world. And we can see that even in this material plane, if someone wants to go on vacation, yeah, they may travel to another city, they may go traveling, but mostly they go out from the city into the country. I remember when my father used to take us on vacation, we lived near New York City. It was quite built up. And we would go upstate New York to the Finger Lakes. There's the 5 lakes there that were formed and the glaciers melted. And we'd, camp out and go fishing, Sorry. But the idea was to get out of the city and get into a more natural, soothing atmosphere where you can relax and forget about all your woes. And so that's there's always some more. But this is kind of a universal principle. So this is the model that it's why is that? Because the original sylvan idyllic place is in the spiritual world. That's actually our home. That's the you won't this is we started actually 2 verses before this and we went 4 verses after it. So all this is in the context of all of the demigods being led by Brahma, who had been severely chastised by Virabhadra for insulting Shiva, led by Daksha, culminating in the horrific self-immolation of Sati, and then the beheading of Daksha. So Brahma came down and he explained what had happened and why they had suffered, and now they have to go and make amends with Shiva. So this is all by way of introduction to that and describing his abode. And Prabhupada is giving us some very interesting insights into it. So first thing he says is that in the material world, ordinarily when there's a beautiful atmosphere and the sounds are beautiful, all the birds are singing, Sugandhika. Who can guess why that forest is called Sugandhika? Because of the fragrance. It describes the flowers are there, so many different varieties of flowers growing and fruits, So that's immediately, the heady atmosphere of a forest like that. The fragrances will excite the conjugal appetite. And this is what happens in the material world. When there's a nice atmosphere, which they try to recreate in these resorts, you spend a whole ton of money if you have it, to go in some idyllic place, or the cruise ships. The cruise ships are really interesting because you're in a dangerous situation, right? I mean, they had one cruise ship actually crash. I mean, more than one has crashed, by unexpected. I read about once that unexpectedly, I've never traveled on the ocean very much. I used to, sail on the little lakes or something. But sometimes these unpredictable waves just come up, huge waves, and capsize ships, and they don't know what happened, even big ships, because there's so much going on underneath there. There's volcanoes going on, and things happening, little earthquakes. Yeah, so you don't really know what's going to happen. It's dangerous. So you want to go out on this ship to get away from your ordinary life and to be in an idyllic situation. So they create all this, thing you can. There's gambling going on, illicit sex. There's everything going on, in order to try to forget your woes and to try to enjoy. So that's what the material world is all about. Whenever there's some idyllic situation, immediately your enjoyment tendency is raised up. But Srila Prabhupada contrasts that with the spiritual world, with the Vaikuntha. Now Vaikuntha is the spiritual world, and the very word means no anxiety. No anxiety. The nature of this world is anxiety. There's always some danger. Your very body is so fragile and difficult. Disease can attack it. There's the threefold miseries that are caused by others. We experience that at work, by our boss, or by our co-workers. There's some threats from some other country, or on a more immediate level, insects and all kinds of things. It just happens. And you may not be suffering one of those now, but they're threatening. It's possible, and you need a defense system for that. And then you have the adhyatmic miseries, which are those caused by your own mind and body. Now, there's a certain overlap here, because if someone attacks you and beats you up, then you go to the hospital, you come out, and that person is long gone. But then it's your own body that's causing your problem, the bruises and maybe the broken bones. So that becomes adhyatmic. You see how adhibhakti becomes adhyatmic. So many diseases, so many difficulties, mental, emotional, can happen, where your own situation is actually very difficult. And then there's the adhidaivic miseries, those caused by higher powers, by natural forces that you can't do anything about. Those sometimes are like most catastrophic. I remember last year, who can forget it, that hurricane that hit Houston and just stayed there and poured down torrents of rain, never before seen, like biblical rain. People lost their homes, there were some deaths, all those oil refineries and everything, it's overflowed with their toxins, and oh my God, what a mess. All caused by the rain. What can you do? Now we're entering into another high point of the hurricane season. I'm going to Florida in a couple of weeks. Knock on wood. The heart of the... I don't know if you know, I have this app. There's hurricanes coming off of the Baja all the time and going out, and one of them hit Hawaii recently, caused a lot of rain there. And because we're in the northern hemisphere, there's no hurricanes here. I've been here 30 years. The hurricane doesn't hit, at least in my experience. Earthquakes, I know, but I mean but because we happen to be. But if you're on the other side of the continent, it's constantly the threat. So we have earthquakes, and so this is the material world. One or more of these is always either impinging on you, or threatening to impinge on you, and that's what material life is all about. And ultimately, you succumb to one of those. The body itself is very fragile, and you die. And so that's the material world. So any enjoyment in this world, any so-called material enjoyment, is just totally illusory. It's self-deluding. Because the first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita is that being in an enjoying mood and being what we call fruitive in your life, which is basic standard life, is sure to bring you back for another term. The soul itself, the person itself, we are spirit souls, are eternal. We're not nadhanyate hanyamane shirire. How many times did Prabhupada quote that line? The body is not slain, the self is not slain when the body is slain. And we don't usually think of it slain, but we're slain by the material energy. The body stops working. So what happens to the soul? What happens to us? What happens to me? You go into another body, according to the thoughts and desires and activities that you cultivated in this present body. So the basic principle of the Vedic culture is that we should try to we should aspire to and learn how to break this cycle of birth and death, old age, and disease. That's really what's happening in all of our lives. We're working out our previous karma. We're experiencing so many things, and we're preparing our next life. So is it possible? We should first. Is it possible to break out of this chain, which has these three miseries, and then the icing on the cake is birth, old age, disease, and death? Or are we doomed in this situation? Well, that's what the Hare Krishna movement, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which is the branch of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, which means a community and a disciplic line of spiritual masters and disciples, following the instructions that have been given by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita and srimadbhagavatam and all these other books. These are actually his words. Vyasadeva is also an incarnation. And so the basic principle there is that, as I mentioned, we're not the body, we're pure spirit soul, we're covered and restricted by this body in what we call conditioned. And the soul has no birth, no age, old age, no disease, no threefold miseries, and no anxiety in our original state. So how to get back to that original state, that's the process of Krishna consciousness, otherwise officially known as Bhakti Yoga, the process of yoga. So this Srimad Bhagavatam that we're reading, otherwise known as Bhagavat Purana, so beautifully translated and commented upon by our founder, Acharya, spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, is giving us very practical instructions how to cultivate this consciousness of Krishna, consciousness of God, and to focus our attention and our activities and our life on service to God, so that we can transcend and break out of this bondage of birth and death. Now, at the other side of this whole process is enjoyment that cannot even be imagined in this state. Because this state of Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means eternal life, full of ever-expanding bliss and full knowledge. That's what we're aiming for. That's who we are. That nature is covered now. We are asat. We're certainly temporary in these bodies. These bodies are temporary. We're achit. We have so much ignorance. We have so many things we don't know. And who can say that they're always full of ananda? Life has its ups and downs. And even the ups are nothing compared to what we learn about going on in the spiritual world. So Srila Prabhupada focuses in this purport on how the atmosphere is much, much more enticing and pleasant in the Vaikuntha world, the spiritual world, but there's no impetus for a sense pleasure, because all of the desires are directed toward expressing one's loving devotion to the Lord, and receiving, and also he's reciprocating in so many ways. So what we learn about in the spiritual world is that Krishna is there. He has so many friends, he has so many lovers, and parents as well, and so many pets, you might say, so many loving pets, you know, in terms of the cows and the deer and others. And he has a loving relationship, completely fulfilling with every one of them. Because he's God, omniscient, unlimited, he can have a personal relationship with each one of us. Not that he's way up there on the stage or on the throne, and you can hardly relate to them. Who am I? I'm so insignificant, you know. No, he can relate to each one of us very personally, and that's what that loving relationship completely obliterates any desire for sense gratification, headed by sex desire. So that's what Srila Prabhupada is describing. Now he quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, and I'd like to explore this verse a little bit. In the second chapter, when Krishna is describing the nature of the pure soul, the self-controlled, the Stita Muni, the wise devotee who is equipoised in this world. He also describes, he has this verse, Vishayava nivartante niraharasa dehina rasavarja masopyasya param jashrana vartate, that the one of the preliminary goals of any aspiring transcendentalist is to break the attachments, or to counteract the attachments that we have for the things of this world, because that's what's going to bring us back for another term of suffering. So therefore this verse says, Vishayava nivartante nirahara siddhena. If you don't consume them, nirahara means literally to eat. Each one of the senses eats something, consumes something. The eyes, something beautiful, the ears, beautiful sounds, the tongue, obviously food. Experiencing and enjoying, that's called ahara in this sense. So it's nirahara, that if you turn away from these by force of will, and you say, okay, I know it's bad for me, just like someone who's trying to get off some drug or something, or alcohol. So I can't go to the bar, I can't bring home a six-pack and put it in the fridge and expect to not drink. I have to withdraw from that. Sometimes you go to a place where other people are trying to give it up, and you have some support, and so you're able to, by force of will, give up drinking. So that's what he's describing. Vishaya means sense enjoyments of any kind. vinivartante, they turn away from them. In other words, you can do that for some time. You know, that's one strategy. But unfortunately, the desire is still in there. It's in your heart. Just like any alcoholic will know that you may, okay, I'm dry for, you have the little, you go to AA. I was never an alcoholic, but I went up there. There's one up the street. And if you're, good for like 6 months, a year, you have different coins that they give you so that you can be reminded, oh, I'm making some progress, right? But everyone will tell you, any former alcoholic, okay, I know that for the rest of my life, I cannot just hang out in the bar. I can't hang out with my former buddies if they're going to be drinking, because the atmosphere, the desire is still in there. And that's exactly what Krishna says. You may by force give up these things in an effort to detach yourself from matter so you can maintain transcendence. But the desire still remains. Rasa varjam. But rasa varjam rasopyasya, but even if you see, param drishtva is a way of saying to see or directly experience the Supreme, which is what we're doing. When we chant Hare Krishna, which is our main process, chanting this mantra, we're coming directly in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead through sound vibration. This is very mystical, and it's not explainable by ordinary science, but it's true. And that param drishtra, direct experience, even the desire goes. You don't have to worry, If you could have been an alcoholic, but as long as you're chanting Hare Krishna, you're in this party and you're in good consciousness, you won't want to drink. You won't want to. You'll see, and you'll feel detachment. You'll actually feel detached. So that's the great power. That's one of the evidences of the great power of this process of yoga. Because all other processes of yoga, the Lord Chaitanya, he has this wonderful verse, Krishna bhakta nishkama ataeva shanta. That devotees have no material desire, therefore, pure devotees, therefore they're peaceful, completely peaceful in this world, even though there may be some disturbance outside. But bhukti, mukti, siddhi, kami, sakaliya, shanta, these three terms, we're very familiar with the meaning, though maybe not the terms. Bhukti means those who are after ordinary material pleasure of every kind. That's called the bhukti kami. Kami comes from the word kama, which means sex desire, but it also just means strong desire for any enjoyment. Then that's practically everybody. But then you have a very small number who realize, well, that's just going to damage me. So there you have the mukti kamis, those who want liberation, but not bhakti. They don't want to have a relationship with God. They want liberation without bhakti. And that means impersonal liberation. So that's another kind of material desire. Just a desire for getting out alone, you see. So that also you can't be peaceful, because you can never be fully liberated. You're always at the danger of coming back down again to this plane. That's explained in Bhagavatam. And then there's the siddhi kamis. We're speaking about Kailas, so there's the foremost yogi is Shiva. So you get certain powers, just like the power to astral travel. That became popular at one point. I don't know if you would see. To really travel without the need of on a subtle plane, or getting something from afar. You can manifest certain things. These higher powers are there. They're subtle material powers, but they're there. So that's another diversion, siddhi kami. Because you may be a powerful yogi, but other yogis have better siddhis, or their standard of the siddhis are better. Or you had one, but you lost it because you got diverted, or whatever. It's a material thing, subtle material power. So none of this, the bhukti, the mukti, the siddhi kamis, there's the three categories of non-devotees in this world. Biggest category is bhukti kamis. But the devotees can really be peaceful, because the source of pleasure is not anything from this material world. They certainly don't want anything material, gross material. But even the yogic siddhis, pale. They pale. All of it pales in comparison to bhakti rasa, to the pleasure of serving Krishna and having Krishna manifest personally. So that's why Prabhupada said the inhabitants of the spiritual world are so spiritually enlightened
that in the presence of such spirituality, even sex life is insignificant. So this is an important lesson from this section, and he's going to continue to describe Kailas, but as we go on here, Srila Prabhupada is nicely contrasting it with the nature of the spiritual world. Even though Kailas is such an idyllic place, it pales in comparison to Vaikuntha, because there Krishna is all pervading. So, any discussion on these points? We have a few minutes. Otherwise, we can proceed. All right, let's go on to reading one or two more verses. Text 31. They, the residents of heaven, are coming down to Kailas. They also saw that the bathing ghats and their staircases were made of Vaidurya money. Money is jewels. The water was full of lotus flowers. Passing by such lakes, the demigods reached a place where there was a great banyan tree. And you know who was under the banyan tree? That banyan tree was 800 miles high, and its branches spread over 600 miles around. The tree cast a fine shade which permanently cooled the temperature, yet there was no noise of birds. Purport: generally in every tree there are bird nests, and the birds congregate in the evening and create noise. But it appears that this banyan tree was devoid of nests, and therefore was calm, quiet, and peaceful. There were no disturbances from noise or heat, and therefore this place was just suitable for meditation. So by the influence of Lord Shiva, he created a perfect place for meditation. The demigods saw Lord Shiva sitting under that tree, which was competent to give perfection to mystic yogis and deliver all people. As grave as time eternal, he appeared to have given up all anger. Purport: in this verse, the word Maha Yoga Maye is very significant. Yoga means meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Maha Yoga means those who engage in the devotional service of Vishnu. Meditation means remembering, smaranam. There are 9 different kinds of devotional service, of which smaranam is one process. The yogi remembers the form of Vishnu within his heart. Thus there were many devotees engaged in meditation on Lord Vishnu under the big banyan tree. The Sanskrit word maha is derived from the affix mahat. This affix is used when there is a great number of or quantity. So Maha Yoga indicates that there were many great yogis and devotees meditating on the form of Lord Vishnu. Generally, such meditators are desirous of liberation from material bondage, and they are promoted to the spiritual world, to one of the Vaikunthas. Liberation means freedom from material bondage or nescience. In the material world, we are suffering life after life because of our bodily identification, and liberation is freedom from that miserable condition of life. So this is, I mentioned the mukti kamis. So these are devotees, they're devotional yogis who are into meditation, but they're meditating on Vishnu. They're meditating on the personal form of the Lord. And so that's a type of bhakti yoga. And if they're perfect at it, they can also go back to home, back to Vaikuntha Loka. Okay, one more chance at discussion. Otherwise, we'll adjourn. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.